Hello and welcome to Kelly's Wordy Reactions. So today I have a video that I would like for us to take a look at. The podcast here is called The Status Coup, and I would encourage you to go over to that channel if you want to see more videos like this. I have not seen a lot of their content, but I do. I have recently come across his guest over here on the Status Coup by the name of Richard Wolff, and so this particular interview of Richard Wolff, I felt like did a very good job of touching on so many of the points about tariffs and just really giving a full look at the truth of everything, because what we're getting today is a lot of lies and gaslighting and just people who really don't care about the condition that we are going to be left with as all these things are being implemented. So, so I really like listening to him talk about this subject, and hopefully you will get something out of it too. So I'm going to go ahead and start the video.
These are fraudsters. They are fraudsters who hide what they do by claiming that they're out there getting rid of fraudsters. Mr. Musk, he knows what the word entitlement covers. He knows why he's using such a word, why the people have even allowed that word to function as if it were charity.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up. Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Professor Richard Wolff, renowned economist, also founder of Democracy at Work. And I wanted to talk to you because I don't know if you heard, tomorrow's Liberation Day, according to President Trump. He has been teasing across the board, quote, reciprocal tariffs.
So of course, this was before what day was it? What day was that? Was it April 5th? Or today is April the 8th, 2025. So this was before that whole fiasco rolled out, where he came out with the boards and tried to explain these tariffs on all these countries and what it all meant and all that. So this they apparently did this the day before that. Okay, let's get back into it.
It's all over the place. One day it's against these countries, the next it's against these countries, then he wants to invade Greenland. But essentially, from what we know, we're going to get some type of plan tomorrow. It could be across the board, a flat tariff, so he says. Also, there's been reports that as his aides kind of try to talk him down, he is trying to push higher. Washington Post, Trump pushes aides to go bigger on tariffs as key deadline nears. Trump is pushing senior advisors to go bigger on tariff policy as they prepare for what the White House called Liberation Day, the April 2nd date he has set for major escalation in his global trade war. Trump advisors are in intensive deliberations about the exact scope of the import duties to be imposed, which officials have described as affecting trillions of dollars worth of trade. Okay. You're very good at breaking things down. Before we get to Trump and whether this is smart or insane, what exactly is his stated rationale for tariffs? Can tariffs be a good thing for our economy? And are his proposed tariffs a good or bad thing?
Well, Jordan, I'm real glad you asked the question because I am an economics professor. And while I'm not all that proud of it. It did require me to read a little bit and to learn a little bit. And so let me share that with you because I think it'll answer your question. There's nothing new about a tariff. First of all, to make sure everyone's on the same page, a tariff is just a tax. It's a name for a particular tax. It should be called an import tax, which it once was called before people got used to the tradition of giving it this funny name, tariff. Okay, it's hundreds of years old. Many countries at many times have had tariffs, including the United States. Put them on, taken them off. Again, nothing new. And why is that important? Because it has generated whole library floors full of literature looking at what they are, how they work, studying what led up to them when they were imposed, what led up to canceling them when that happened, were the results what people hoped for, not, why. All of that is very well known. I have had to teach courses on international trade where a section is always about tariffs because they've been part of this story. Clearly, Mr. Trump doesn't either understand it, or maybe it's the fault of his advisors. Somebody's not cluing the fellow in as to what this literature teaches. So here it is. What effects a tariff will have is never dependent on the tariff alone. It depends on the economic conditions into which you add a tariff. Those can make it have this set of effects or that set of effects. But someone who stands up and says, I'm going to put a tariff and it's going to have these effects, does not know what he's talking about. Let me give you a couple of examples. One of the things Mr. Trump wants to do is hit tariffs on the countries that we used to call our closest friends, Mexico and Canada, with whom we have extraordinary treaties, extraordinary relationships. We are all each other's major trading partners. So, and we have a treaty, used to be called NAFTA, was renegotiated under Mr. Trump's first presidency. He signed off on the treaty he will now break unilaterally with no discussion. He's going to break the treaty that was signed by him. I mean, it's kind of charming if you think about it. Okay, let's assume he does what he says, a 25% tariff on anything produced in Mexico, we'll start with that, brought into the United States for sale. That imported from Mexico item will be subject to a tariff of 25%. So let's take an example. You buy an avocado because you really like it on toast. You buy an avocado for $1. You've been doing that for a while. Avocados overwhelmingly come from Mexico. Now, after tomorrow, if he does what he said he would do, and like you said, Jordan, maybe he will, maybe he won't. He's very ups and downsy with this. But 25% means that as of tomorrow, that same avocado that you got today for $1, you're going to have to pay $1.25. The dollar will go to Mexico to pay for the avocado. The quarter, the tariff, is money you as an American will be sending to Washington, which means that the Republican Party, which has advocated tax cuts for the last century, is now a big champion of a humongous tax increase. What will be the effect of that? Well, here we go. One effect might be that Americans are so in love with avocados and so in love with avocados from Mexico that they will continue to buy them, and Uncle Sam, or in this case, Uncle Don, will get 25 cents for every avocado Americans buy. So we will continue to have them. The president will have more revenue for the government. Good for him. And we will all have a real boost to our inflation, because that item has now just gone up, and not by a little, by a lot. Now multiply this by all the goods that come from Mexico, and there are loads of them. You know why? Because of NAFTA, which is now 30 years old. For 30 years, companies have moved production to Mexico because you could pay low wages in Mexico, produce something, bring it into the United States without paying a tax. So we get lots of stuff from Mexico. For example, automobiles, and not just the whole car, but all the parts, which means as of tomorrow, the cost of automobiles is going to shoot up by a lot, because a lot of our cars come from Mexico, and those that don't come from Mexico, they come from Canada, which is the same story. So we're going to see, whoa, you know what that means? Not just that your car will go up, but it means your taxi ride, which is in a car, will go up because the cost of the taxi. Everyone that's replaced because it has an accident or it's old will now have to pay a lot more. And that means everything that comes to you in a vehicle, because Mexico and Canada also produce trucks. Now the inflation in this country is going to shoot up. Mr. Trump poo-poos that. Is that because he knows it won't happen? No, that's not possible. He can't know what's going to happen. That's what the literature on tariffs teaches. He just
let me ask you about his argument,
Yep.
which, you know, even the United Auto Workers president, Sean Fain, at least agrees in some part as far as the auto company tariffs specifically. But Trump was asked, you know, when the car companies, particularly the big three, start increasing prices on their cars, you know, is that a risk? Trump said, and I quote, "I couldn't care less. I hope they raise their prices, because if they do, people are going to buy American-made cars. We have plenty." Well, that sounds nice in theory, but you can't apply that to all industries. Like,
you can't.
if you raise prices on avocados, there's not necessarily a ton of avocado farming in America.
And I just want to break in right here and say, oh my gosh, this economist, Richard Wolff, I like the way he's going to go ahead and explain it again, but it's as if people don't really hear what is being said. So for Donald Trump to say, "Oh, we have a lot of American cars," it's as if the interviewer, you know, no disrespect to the interviewer, and I do appreciate being able to bring you his interview here, but it's like he's listening to Donald Trump say we have a lot of American cars, but then it does not mean what it sounds like, because just because you have an American car doesn't mean that it was manufactured in totality in the country. What he's saying is we get parts from Mexico for these cars. We get parts from Canada for these cars. I myself have even had a car that I had to end up trading because it needed a part, and the people who made the part, they told me the people that made the part went out of business. I don't know if they just stopped doing business with the particular company or not, but I needed a repair and I could not get the repair done. I literally took it to the dealership to get the repair. I couldn't get it done because I couldn't, get this part. And so it was real. I really felt like, okay, well then you guys owe me a car then, because how can you sell me a car and then I can't get it fixed? But the point here is, just because it's an American car does not mean it has all American parts, but he's going to work that point out. I just wanted to break in and say, like, we hear these people who are in leadership, they're not telling the truth. They're saying the opposite of what it is. And people are tempted to believe it. And I guess a lot of people are not going to believe until they actually just see the damage. And, the sad thing is, a lot of times people will see the damage and they won't believe it. I saw a video where a lady was saying something about what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did recently. Well, they haven't done anything. They're out of the White House now. They haven't done a thing. But she's literally listening to news outlets where they're still being blamed for what's currently going on, and she believed it. So anyway, let's get back to the voice of reason over here. Let me turn myself off.
That's right. It doesn't apply to automobiles either. If you raise the price of automobiles, you're going to have a whole hell of a lot of people not buying the automobile. They're going to keep that jalopy not for 5 years, but for 10 or for 15. I can show you many parts of the world where the prices of automobiles are such that you keep them for 20 or 30 years, and then you scavenge 1 out of every 5 in order to make the parts for. Oh, no. You can't know how people will react to a jump in prices. Mr. Trump, well, then they'll do that. No, you don't, Mr. Trump. That's make-believe. If you ask me, is it possible that what Mr. Trump is saying might work out? Yes, it's one of many possibilities. But even then, you would have a bad inflation. If people keep buying cars that are higher price, let me be an economist for a moment. That means they don't have money to buy other things.
Right.
So even if it's true for the cars, they're going to cut back on everything else. People have limited budgets, more so today than at any time in recent American history. One of the reasons Mr. Trump got elected was that Americans were angry about the inflation that happened under Biden. Now, it happened for many reasons. Blaming Biden is silly, but that's how he got into office. He's in trouble if what he does to the people who voted for them is give them a worse inflation than they got out of and voted for him because of. So he doesn't know. But let me continue. And I'm going to stay with Mexico, not because it's the only story, but because it shows you what kind of trouble we're getting into. We are deporting millions of people, or we say we're going to. We have started deporting undocumented immigrants and a whole lot of other people caught up in the inefficient way they're doing it to Mexico. Mexico's economy is not booming. You're sending millions of people. There's no jobs for those people. But wait, it's worse. Those people who had jobs here took a portion of the money they earned in their jobs here in America and sent it back to their families, their elderly parents, their children in Mexico. It's about 17, last I looked, 17% of their GDP is remittances, these are called, the money coming back. That stops when you deport them. So you're sending people who need a job but won't find one to an economy that's falling apart because there are no more remittances. And then you hit them with a tariff, which means they can't export in the way they used to their avocados. The Mexicans, by the way, you ask them, they know very well what happens if you raise the price of an avocado, because they have made many experiments. Raise it by 10 cents, raise it, see what happens. How many sales do you lose if you jack up the price? All businesses understand that. You weigh the benefit of a higher price against the loss of fewer sales at that higher price. So hitting them with a 25%, that's going to cut into the export of avocados. And so the avocado farms are going to lay off work. You know what we're looking at? Mexico, a country that a large part of it is now controlled by gangs that nobody can dislodge because they've been there for 50 years. And we're making that troubled economy much, much worse. Really want that? You want a long border of a society falling apart, which you are causing?
Which then also, Trump and the Republicans, they got their, panties in a bunch about this supposed invasion. Yeah. Well, if you cripple the Mexican economy, won't you have more people trying to come to America? Just like Central American economies that we've done?
It's the same story with all of them. And by the way, the Mexicans aren't stupid. You know what they'll do? They'll put these avocados on a truck in Mexico, drive it across the border to Honduras or Guatemala or Costa Rica, and then ship them to the United States, because the tariff is against Mexico,
right?
Not against, right? So Mr. Trump will then have a new problem. It'll take him weeks or months to figure it out. By the way, that's why the sanctions against Russia over Ukraine, they didn't work. The Russians figured out, as everybody who's ever been sanctioned has figured out, 27 ways around it.
Right.
It's stupid. Again, there are whole books on sanctions that would have told you that. The Russians had it easy. They couldn't sell their oil and gas to Europe. Fine. They sold it to China and India and became closer aligned with them. That's not good for the United States. Not at all. But
in terms of the auto, I want to zero back in on that. So in Trump's mindset, if the companies that are being facing tariffs, if they hike prices, people will just buy from American companies. Well, as far as I know, there's very few American-only manufactured auto companies. They might have plants in America, but they get some of their parts from Canada or from Mexico. So I don't know what theoretical American manufacturers of autos he's talking about, because most, even companies that have plants in Americas, a lot of their parts come from other countries.
That's why the impact on auto prices is going to be severe. If you trace how autos are made, certain parts are made in Mexico. Then they're typically sent to Canada, where they are further worked up. And then that further worked up part is shipped back to Mexico for another. And that was all reasonable to take advantage of labor costs and skills and all of that, because there were no tariffs. Now you're going to not just raise a tariff on the finished car, but that finished car is going to have tariff-laden parts in it, so that the total effect of the car, the price will be ridiculous. And let me assure you, there was last week a communication from two major Japanese companies, I believe Mitsubishi and Nissan, informing the Mexican government that they are not going to locate car factories that they had intended to build in Mexico until there's clarity about all these tariffs. I want to remind people, one of the things the literature on tariffs shows us is that a tariff doesn't have an immediate effect. And the reason is simple. A capitalist, an employer, particularly a big one, is not going to spend a ton of money moving car factories from Mexico, say, across the border into Texas. That's a very expensive operation, will take at least 2 years, if not more. And then they're saying to themselves, particularly this Mr. Trump, he turns them on, he turns them off, he raises them, he lowers them. We can't risk billions of dollars of decision to move something only to discover 2 years from now when we're done that we shouldn't have done it, that the tariffs have been relieved, that the Mexicans rose up in some kind of anger, or that invasion you talked about, and so he undid it in a rush the way he obviously works. They're not going to do it. So what begins to happen often in the history of tariffs is everybody surprised? Nothing happens because the business community is unwilling to commit. In fact, here's the irony, Jordan, and it's all over the Wall Street right now. Businesses are holding back investments because of the uncertainty created by the on-again, off-again tariff threat, especially when you remember that to the tariff Mr. Trump imposes, there may well be retaliation by all the countries in the world who don't want it. We're not going to let him get away with a one-way punishment of them. If you punish them, they're going to do you the same favor. So you know what's happening? We're facing a recession, a bad one.
So the Economist is telling us, okay, just because you say that here are these tariffs, we're going to make it to where it's more advantageous for the American companies to go ahead and bring things back and start making things inside of America again. That doesn't mean that the companies are actually going to do it. Because if the companies don't feel any type of sense of security about doing that, then they're not going to do it. They're just going to do nothing. Another reason why they wouldn't do it is because it just doesn't make sense. I don't know if it was him or another economist that I've listened to, but in order to pay the wages that Americans need to make, it also just does not make sense for them to bring the manufacturing back here. So yeah. Anyway, I don't know if he's going to work that point out as well, but the instability, of the leadership, together with the fact that it just doesn't make economic sense, is what is going to hold any movement back from actual manufacturing coming here. And then a third point is the length of time that it will actually take. So these tariffs are taking effect now, but if magic happened and all these things were, people moved companies back here and they were able to pay living wage for Americans and all of that, it's still going to take who knows how much time. And and then a fourth point is all this is just gaslighting. No, I don't know what this is meant to do other than just suck more money out of us consumers to be able to have to pay more and more and more and have less and less and less money. And that seems to be in line with Project 2025, just utterly crippling the public. So anyway, let's get back to them. Just a second here.
Because businesses are not spending the money that was anticipated because they can't make a rational decision. Do you close the factory in Mexico and move it only to discover you have spent billions for no reason? What are you going to do? Go back to Mexico? They're very angry about this. They would rather have hit us with a tariff and commit that it's permanent, or commit that it's at least, I don't know, 10 years, something. Otherwise, they can't act. So Mr. Trump, yeah, could he pull out of the hat? But what Mr. Trump is doing, and I say this as a professional economist, Mr. Trump is desperate. And what you're seeing is the economics equivalent of a Hail Mary pass in football. It's over. You're about to lose. You've got very little left to lose, so you don't care. You don't care about making Canada a country that no longer sends its tourists to America. That's happening. Mexico, that will find other markets. The Chinese will develop a love of avocado, and the Mexican avocado will go to China. Canada can't sell its electricity here. You know who'll buy it? China. And I could go on.
Is there a case to be made, just playing devil's advocate, that under the scenario where all the auto prices and other industry prices go up so much that, like you said, people just stop buying cars, that would harm the auto companies so much that they're forced to bring jobs, plants and jobs back to America because their demand has plummeted? Is there any argument for that?
Not really. And this is very hard to explain, not because the economics is difficult. You'll see that in a minute. But because Americans don't want to think about this, which is no compliment. I mean, I'm in America. I'm born in Ohio, lived and worked here all my life. So, but here's the reality. People have to understand, why did so many American companies, including all the biggest ones, move so much of their production out of the United States over the last 40 years? Remember, what Mr. Trump says he wants to do is bring them back, reshore them, various words. Well, okay, then let's go back. Why did they go? Why is it a problem? And the answer is very simple. The wages over there are much lower than the wages you have to pay Americans. Everybody knows that. What you may not know, although you should, is that China is a much bigger market than the United States, because it has 4 times the number of people, and it isn't a terribly poor country anymore. So in short, the reasons corporations went were 2: lower wages and a bigger, faster growing market. If you go to a business school and you take a course, I teach those courses. You teach young entrepreneurs, you want to do well in your business, go to where the wages are low and the market is growing. That's the rule. So they went. That hasn't changed. China continues to grow 2 to 3 times faster than the United States. It's been doing that for 25 years. There's no end of that in sight. None. So you're going to tell companies, oh, we're going to hit you with a tariff, and they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to go back to where the wages are much higher and the market is growing slowly. You know what that is? A recipe for disaster. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. The first thing they'll do if these tariffs stick is they'll leave China and they'll go to another country nearby. That they might do. But they, of course, would be worried that he'll then put a tariff on whatever country they go to. And we're going to have a kind of a tit for tat kind of maneuvering around here. But they can't come back. It's not feasible. Or let me put it to you in a more scary way. Maybe Mr. Trump's long term is he knows what I'm saying, or his advisors do. So he knows the tariff is only the beginning. He's got to make it worthwhile. He can't control the market. The Chinese have him on that. But he can control the wages, maybe. Maybe he can drive down the wage level of the United States so it becomes competitive with the rest of the world. Let me say that in real English. Crush the American working class. Make the middle class a memory receding in the rearview mirror, something your grandparents will tell you about, but you're not going to have a steady job, and you're not going to have a decent income. And of course, you're not going to have children. And of course, you're not going to get married. You're going to scramble around, piece together a few gigs here and there, and hope that you can get by, like a lot of people in poor countries already know. Maybe that's the future. And if it is, man, the American people better stop it now before it gets some momentum.
Which is a good segue, because he's now moving to strip unionization rights for most federal workers. So
Exactly.
that kind of goes to what you're saying. You know, on a bigger picture, I want to ask, you know, it seems to me tariffs, whether it's across the board reciprocal or even more targeted ones, it's really a Band-Aid for a much bigger gaping economic wound, because NAFTA, for those that don't know, I think written by multinational corporate conglomerates and Wall Street, there was no actual enforcement or penalties imposed on companies that offshore jobs. So wouldn't it be a much more sensible policy from the federal government if you actually penalize corporations that are benefiting from operating in America but are offshoring their labor to other countries, whether it be through heavier taxes on companies that offshore, some type of penalties, rather than tariffs that the consumers pay, not the companies? Aren't tariffs making victims to the wrong person?
Yeah, but Jordan, you know, as do the American people, why that's never going to happen.
I do know, but I had to ask.
Okay. This is a government that is bought and paid for by those people. They don't buy it and they don't pay for it in order to get it to do that. They buy it and pay for it to get it to see. Can I say a word about this non-unionization?
Sure.
Just some facts that you'll never hear from the government. The federal government employs about 5 million people, half of them in the civilian and half of them in our military. So that makes about 2.5 million people that are civilian. Those are the ones that are being fired by Mr. Musk's chainsaw program. Okay? And the argument is this has something to do with efficiency. That's complete nonsense, and I will show you how and why. 2.5 million people work for the federal government. If you're interested in governmental efficiency, let's remember we have 3 levels of government in America: federal, state, and local. Civilian employees of the federal government, 2.5 million. Civilian employees of the 50 state governments, 5 million. Civilian employments of the cities and towns of America, local government, 15 million. If you really wanted to do something about government efficiency, you would go after the 20 million state and local public servants, not the 2.5 million at the federal level. What fakery you're doing. Number 2, statistics. Real simple. If you go back to the 1960s and you ask the question, how many civilian employees did the federal government of the United States have in the 1960s? I'll give you the answer because I've done the work. 2.5 million. Let me do that again. 2.5 million. And how many today? 2.5 million. Guess what? The population of the United States is 100 million more people today than it was in the 1960s. We have the same number of federal employees providing services to a population 100 million larger than they used to. You know what economists call it when the same number of people provide service to a much larger customer base? That's called efficiency, jackass. If you wanted to celebrate the federal government, you would, and you would say, wow, what an achievement. that you have been able to hold on to 2.5 million, not expand while the population grew. This is a fake game. This is like when they used to say, every time they savage their workforce, we're reforming our business model. Oh, stop. You're not reforming anything. You're firing people because you got a new piece of machinery or whatever happened. Stop it. At least be honest when you do this. This is all a game. The whole purpose of it is Mr. Trump wants to show a dramatic result that he doesn't have to borrow trillions of dollars, which recent U.S. governments have had to do. Why? Because he's saving a lot of money. There aren't many places where he can do it, and this is a place where he can do it as long as he surrounds it with lots of theater, lots of make-believe, lots of, smoke and mirrors and all the rest of it, efficiency. Look, I have participated in efficiency movements in a variety of scenes in my life because they often call in economists. To do it properly, you really have to go in and look at how are people, what are the tasks that have to be performed? How have they worked it out? What's the division of labor? And then you study it, and then you pay big bucks to get a report from a consulting outfit like Arthur Andersen or any one of and McKinsey, any of the big ones. And they spend a lot of time, and you have to pay them, and they give you suggestions on how you can get more efficiency. Any serious effort at efficiency would have to do that. Mr. Musk and Mr. Trump haven't done any of that. Mr. Musk stands in front of the TV cameras holding a chainsaw, and that's what he's doing. He's cutting thousands at a time. No one in their right mind. That has nothing to do with efficiency. Firing 10,000 people here, 5,000 over there.
It's a good segue because you've already painted a picture that Trump wants to basically create a economic Hunger Games where the proletariat and the paupers fight for the scraps.
That's right.
Well, Emperor Musk, as I like to call him, he's not really hiding what the rest of the objectives are. Let me play this.
The waste report in entitlement spending, which is which is most of the federal spending is entitlements. That's like the big one to eliminate, because that's the sort of $500 billion, maybe $700 billion a year. That is also a mechanism by which the Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants.
He's just calling for eliminating entitlements. That doesn't sound like waste, fraud, and abuse. That sounds like let's just get rid of the social safety net. Senator Bill Cassidy also had a Freudian slip. Let's take a look at this because he kind of let it slip that it doesn't seem like it's about waste, fraud, or abuse, what Musk and Trump are doing.
Let's bring that approach not to just what DOGE is doing, discretionary spending, but let's look at Medicare. Is there some way that we can cut Medicare so that reform Medicare so that benefits stay the same, but that is less expensive, more efficient? I would say that there is, and that's where our opportunity lies.
Yes.
Reform. So on one end, this economic Hunger Games you painted. On the other end, let's just get rid of the bare minimum entitlements we have, which they're not really entitlements because people have paid into them.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, that use of the word. But, these are fraudsters. They are fraudsters who hide what they do by claiming that they're out there getting rid of fraudsters. Mr. Musk, he knows what the word entitlement covers. He knows why he's using such a word, why the people have even allowed that word to function as if it were charity. It's not a charity. It is first and foremost paid for by the people who get the money. That's the truth of it. And look at the finance. Anyone, you go to your Social Security Administration, it explains how it funds what it does. Anybody who wanted to know would understand that. But put that aside for a minute. It shouldn't be that way. It should, in fact, be an entitlement. Here's another entitlement. If there's a public park in the city where you live, you're entitled to go there and with a blanket and your friends and have a picnic in the park. You're entitled to that. If you have a child, it's entitled to a public education through the 12th grade. You know why we do that? Because a civilized society does that. And we all pay taxes so that we can enjoy these services that make modern life possible. Do we really want a society that has millions of elderly people wandering around because they can't get enough food? Begging us every time we go from our car to our home, to the movie theater, to the supermarket, because they can't survive. Other countries have that. Go to India, you'll see a wonderful spectacle all the time. You can't go to China anymore because they don't allow that there. They don't have that there. They have a social safety net. Come on, there's something going on here in the United States. And I think Mr. Trump is desperate. I think they know that the jig is up. It's over. Look, and I know this is hard for Americans. When the empire is growing, which was the last 70 years before around 2015, it was fun to be on the ride up. It's a lot less fun on the ride down. We are on the ride down. And the question is, could we do that in a humane, decent way? Yes, we could. Or we could watch while the people at the top hold on to their wealth as the ship goes down, which means all the rest of us get chucked overboard. That's what's going on here. That is what they are saying. We're going to hold on. The country needs everybody's help because for the first time in a century, we have a real economic competitor, and he's winning. It's called China.
Right.
I wish it weren't true, but it is the truth, and pretending otherwise not going to solve it. Right? China, India, and Russia are now part of the BRICS. If you add the other dozen countries that are part of the BRICS alliance, that's over half the population of this planet. The United States has 4.5% of the people of the world. Come on, don't be nuts. Yeah, you have nuclear weapons. You can't overcome that difference. Don't do it. There's a reason why Ukraine is losing. You can pretend, tell everyone, tell yourself a story, but watch it. Month after month, the line moves westward between the Russians and the Ukrainians. I mean, there's a level of self-delusion that we suffer now in America. And I think maybe when empires go down, whether you go back to the Roman or the Greek or any of them, maybe that's what people do. Maybe we are denying the way others have denied when their empires went down. But it's not a recipe for success.
I want to ask you a bigger picture economic question, because you and I have talked forever that the economic numbers, the jobless numbers is a big bunch of baloney.
Yep.
And Politico, of all places, I wasn't expecting it, recently had a report. Voters were right about the economy. The data was wrong.
That's right.
This was done by Eugene Ludwig. He was the chair of the Ludwig Institute for Shared Prosperity. He's a former U.S. comptroller. And his research and analysis, he zeroed in on the metrics. I'll just read this part. I don't believe those who went into the past election taking pride in the unemployment numbers understood that the near record low unemployment figures, the figure was a mere 4.2% in November, counted homeless people doing occasional work as employed. But the implications are powerful. If you filter the statistic to include as unemployed people who can't find anything but part-time work or who make poverty wage, roughly 25,000, the percentage is actually 23.7%. In other words, nearly 1 of every 4 workers is functionally unemployed in America today. Boy, you don't hear that from CNBC, mainstream media, Democrats and Republicans when they're bragging about their jobs reports. I always said, the unemployment number doesn't take into account God knows how many people have just given up, much less gig work, part-time work, freelance work. So could you respond? I mean, the Great Depression, the unemployment was 25%.
Right.
This analysis is saying real unemployment is close to 24%. And now on top of it, this inflation bomb we're talking about?
Yeah, well, let me try to give you a little bit more of a context. Throughout the year 2024, I can't tell you the number of times I did either interviews or gave talks or something in which I said that the American people are being insulted on a daily basis. The Democratic Party, because they had the president, Mr. Biden, needed to say over and over again that the economy was doing great. And they did. They cherry pick. Look, let me back up. An economy is a very complicated thing. It's like the human body. It's a very complicated thing. And if you go to a doctor and you say, I'm really feeling not so good, what's the matter with me? Suppose what the doctor did is he took a thermometer, stuck it in your mouth, waited 2 seconds, 2 minutes or whatever, said, 98.6 or whatever it's supposed to be, you're fine, go home. Hopefully you would be smart enough to know you need a different doctor because this is incompetent. The medical profession has developed ways to look at your blood, at your urine, at your body's temperatures, but also many, CAT scan and MRI, all of that. A battery of tests because you're a complicated thing, you and your body. Well, the economy is the same. You can, if you pick only the thermometer, the person's fine. You do an MRI and you have to tell them they got 3 weeks to live. And everything in between. So what the government was doing was looking at a low unemployment number, which itself was questionable in the way you just showed. But it also looked at the stock market. The richest 10% of our people own 80% of the stocks. So to look at the stock market tells you about the 10%, but not about the 90% who don't have stocks of any significance. Once you then started looking at what would be the equivalent of a comprehensive diagnosis of the economy, then it turned out that the mass of people were looking at something else, like the food budget of the family, or the eggs per dozen, or the rent they have to pay. When you started focusing on where people were, then there was no mystery. For them, it really is bad. And that's why I said a few minutes ago, the really big picture is you're watching the decline of an empire with the people who have the money and the political position to hold on to theirs are doing it. If I could analyze the American election, that's why Mr. Trump won. The unspoken message, I'll protect you. Give me your money, the rest of it may go. That's why he said the other day, to everybody's consternation, I don't care if the car prices go up. What? What are you talking? This is a society depends on the car. That's how people get from their home to where they buy the food with a car. They get from their home to where they have a job with a car. It's not a rational way of doing it, but it is the way we do it in this country. Car, 16-year-olds like me, eager to get their hands on the car that will make them free. We're a car. You jack up the price suddenly of cars. You think it doesn't matter. I don't care. Wow. You're not thinking. You're not watching. You have no grasp on what it is you're doing, let alone what its consequences are.
And it seems the people are agreeing. This is a new CBS poll. Trump's favorability is going down. Expectations first now. Trump's policies are making you financially, when he came in office, better off. Was it the feeling was it was expected that they'd be better off financially, 42%, now 23%. Worse off, 28% when he came into office. Now it's 42%. So I would assume, we're not psychologists, but at a certain point, if MAGA is going to feel it, I don't know if they're just such patriots that they're going to be fine with, skyrocketing prices across the board. At a certain point, I don't think James Carville has been right since 1992, but he was right. It's the economy, stupid. Could we expect maybe even conservatives to get it if prices go up?
I think the conservatives will not get it when the prices go up. They will buy into some malarkey about either it doesn't matter or it's temporary. Mr. Navarro said that before the cameras yesterday or the day before. Temporary. The last time the Federal Reserve said that an inflationary spike was temporary was before the last one, and they apologized for a year after about how wrong they were to think it was temporary. All right? It's just empty. What will get the conservatives is when those people that are now disappointed begin to act, begin to express in many different ways their upset about what's going on. Then it'll dawn on the conservatives that maybe betting on the Trump horse wasn't the right one to bet on, that what he's doing either should be done in a different way or shouldn't be done because it is provoking the opposite of what people want. Look, it's already accelerating. He can't get the firing of the people in the federal government done in the hatchet way that Musk is doing it. So those people are going into the courts, understandable. And so there are a lot of judges who are looking at it and saying, well, you didn't go through the procedures that are there for that. So I'm undoing what you just. So now they have to threaten the legal system. They have to threaten the judges. Mr. Trump yesterday had to go shake hands with everybody on the Supreme Court because he can see that that's where a lot of this is going to end up, and he has to worry about how that goes. But then maybe he'll do a number and start impeaching. He's getting caught in his own drama, and he doesn't look like a person who understands limits. That's when the thing, when people start to see the judges arrested or stuff, then we're going into another level of this. But yes, that's where it's going, and that's because they're doing they're doing what's rational for them. And that's why we're not going to persuade them. They want to hold on. In a troubled economy, Mr. Musk owns $400 billion. Okay? If you took away $100 billion of him, he'd still be the richest man in the world. And meanwhile, the $100 billion could do magnificent things for the United States. We live in a society where no one says that. No one has yet, I'm saying it, but what are we doing? Why would you leave $100 billion, that's a chunk of change, unavailable to deal with social problems, when if you took it from that man, he'd still be the richest. Suppose we said nobody can have more than 1 billion. Unbelievable what you can do with $1 billion, but that would free trillions immediately.
And this is why I'm just going to break in real quick, just because this thought is just so strong. Like, this is why you don't elect somebody who does not care about people. And I've just never known Donald Trump, and nobody else does either, to be the person that cares about people, like all people, not just some group of people that he, favors. But you elect public servants to do the public servant's job. It's what they want to do. It's what they're gifted at. It's what they're called to. That's how, I always thought we were always made to believe they, put forth the people for us to elect. Or you come forth yourself to say, this is what I want to do. I want to serve the public in this capacity. And then there was all this vetting, and then there was all this you had to take people through these certain processes to look at them to see if they're even worthy to be a candidate. What happened to that? Because it must have gone out the window at some point, because certainly, this man is not a public servant. He doesn't care about all the people, and that's very obvious. And this is where we are, and this is what we have. This man is saying, if he would just make the people that need to pay taxes, then that would solve a lot of the problem. Maybe not all of it. I don't know. He's basically saying that the country, the way that it was as like a world superpower and whatnot, we're not there anymore. China is really, coming up strong to take that place. And apparently, this country doesn't want to give up the standing or be subservient or ask to borrow money or however it goes. I don't know. I'm not an economist, but I do know that he's also saying that if these billionaires would pay their real portion, what they should be paying, then that money, as well as everybody else's taxes, can be allotted to do what it needs to do in the nation. But that's not the choice that they're making. They're not choosing to do that. They're choosing to hold on to what they have and try to suck more out of the entire country. And just like he said, I mean, just throw everybody off the boat, the ship, the plane, the whatever it is, whatever the vehicle is. They're just willing to throw everybody else off so that they can ascend to higher heights. And this is, people that it's worse than not caring about people. But to me, like, this is what you get when you get people that really don't care. Like, if you don't, like, I don't know, just we make this comparison in other ways. Like, if you don't care about some, then it's really questionable as to if you care about anybody. And I think he's pretty much, showing his hand right about now. I don't care about none of y'all. Which is, I mean, to me, it's just always been kind of evident about him. But I don't know, the delusion that he, the spell that he casts on a lot of these people that love him, like, he does not care. He does not care about anybody but himself and whatever his dreams of grandeur are. But anyway, let's go ahead and get back. Let's go ahead and get back to what they're saying.
Immediately to solve social problems. A country that doesn't do that is writing its own death certificate. That's the irony here.
My last question. practically speaking, what should people expect? I mean, of course, it's Trump, so Liberation Day could be paused, delayed, or canceled, or he could just walk it back, make a ton of exceptions. But if this actually goes into effect, how soon can consumers see prices across the board go up? And what are the real life effects?
Well, if the thing is, I have a hard time answering, to be honest, because sometimes it looks like he's going to have piecemeal tariffs against these items from these countries, that kind of thing. Other times he says flat rate for the whole world. And then he has recently, in regard to both Russia and Venezuela, talked about something called secondary tariffs. And a secondary tariff goes like this. If you buy oil from Venezuela, and Venezuela is one of the great oil producing countries in the world. If you're a country in Africa who buys from Venezuela, because the ocean traffic from Venezuela to Africa is a short trip, it's very, very efficient to get your oil from Venezuela if you don't get it from Nigeria. If you're a country that buys oil from Venezuela, Mr. Trump said, we'll hit you with a tariff. In other words, the tariff isn't about trading anymore between the U.S. and another country, where it's reciprocal or not, and so forth. It's becoming just a generalized weapon. Well, what that is doing, it's already doing it, is isolating the United States. I want to warn my fellow citizens. After World War II, a very famous thinker, American, named George Kennan, coined the word containment, that the strategy of the United States was to contain Soviet Union. That's what we're going to do. Isolate them and then build a wall of political, ideological, military around them. The irony is, having pursued that policy for the last 75 years, the end result is the isolation of the United States. The container is becoming the contained. The rest of the world backing away, looking at the United States as a rogue country. Nobody else started hitting anybody with tariffs. That's an American initiative. The New York Times 2 days ago showed us that the American military was involved in the Ukrainian war from the beginning right up to our eyeballs. Wasn't admitted before, but now that Mr. Trump is there, these things can be spoken about. We are becoming isolated. That's not a good piece of news, friend. We can keep saying we're the biggest, we're the greatest, we're the toughest, but we're all alone. Recent votes in the UN are incredible. The whole world on one side, and the United States, Israel, and a couple of other countries on the other side. All alone. And supporting Mr. Netanyahu in the destruction of Gaza makes us all alone. And that's a separate matter from how you particularly understand that issue of conflict between them. But whatever you think about that, this has isolated the bombing of Gaza has isolated the United States. If that were the only thing, it might not matter other than morally. But now it matters because we're doing it economically too. We're the only country that has 700 military bases around the world. Nobody else is even remotely close. We're the only country hitting everybody with tariffs. Come on. I mean, just for a minute, think about the rest of the world. One last thing, because when people think about tariffs, they make such mistakes. Back in the 1960s, there was a period of conflict between the United States and Europe. The Europeans had recovered from World War II and knew that the most important industry at that time was the automobile industry. And if the Japanese and the Germans were going to recover from the devastation of World War II on their on their territory, they would have to prove themselves and the world by beating the United States at its number one industry. They would have to produce automobiles that were better and cheaper than those coming out of GM, Ford, Chrysler. And they did. The first one were the Germans. That was the Volkswagen Corporation. And the second one was Toyota out of Japan. No accident. They went to work. And the Americans were horrified, because we were now going to lose our dominance in the automobile industry, which was the industry of the 20th century. So we went to work and we threatened the Japanese and we forced on them a quota system. I don't know if people are familiar, but for many years around then, the deal was the Japanese were forced to agree they would not sell more than X number of cars in the United States. And that was monitored. They couldn't ship them here and they couldn't sell them. So that was the way they limited the competition. Those cars sold out right away. If you wanted to get one, you often had to pay above list price because they were scarce, etc., etc. Didn't work. So a second way was found, tariff. And the Europeans were told, okay, we will let you ship as many cars as you want, and we won't bother you with the cars, but we're going to carve out a special exemption. And here's how it's going to work. We'll drop the tariff on cars very low, I think it's 2%, which it still is. But for one exception, the pickup truck. The pickup truck made abroad in Europe, brought to the United States, has a 25% tariff and has had it for 50. It's applicable now and has been for 50 years. Americans are in love with their pickup truck. Why? Because the profit on it is much higher than the profit on a car. Is that because of efficiency? No, it's because cars have 2% tariff and pickup truck has 25% tariff. And so Detroit, Ford, General Motors, went to work having a nice He-Man, the Marlboro man, standing with one knee on the pickup truck. Tough guy, manly. You had to develop in America a really strong taste for pickup trucks. And that was only done because you had a profit on it guaranteed by a tariff. There's nothing new here, but it was limited. It was limited because it was understood this was a barrier to trade, and you were worried that somebody else, the Europeans did it, by the way, they did it with chicken. They had their own chicken, and so they said the chicken from America is no good. It's often, by the way, referred to as chicken wars that led to this. But that's the history. To do it here and there, to do it on one, is already pushing it. But to do it across the board, no. That's going to make the United States hated. I'm watching. I pay a lot of attention to European press, particularly French and German. The United States is not looked upon the way it was. It's not the savior anymore. It's not the taste leader. It's a very angry, and you find that in Canada and in Mexico also. This is not, no business wants to have that kind of publicity about itself. And for good reason. It's very complicated why people choose to buy this or to buy that. Mr. Musk is discovering the damage to the Tesla Corporation of the last 3-4 weeks is incredible. The stock has collapsed around the world. People are trading in their Teslas. They don't want to be the one in their neighborhood who drives that thing. Wow. The world of advertising is what it is, and you can flaunt it, but it's not going to make your car sales any better. So for me, again, you're watching a downturn in which those at the top are holding on. They don't want to share anything. They want to make sure they come out of this downturn with what they have. By the way, does that work? Mostly it doesn't.
Right.
Because in the end, it won't be the external that undoes them. It'll be the internal that rises up and says, not anymore.
Thank you very much, Professor Richard Wolff, economist, founder of Democracy at Work, which you could check out on YouTube. Great YouTube channel. We will stay in touch.
All right. So, yeah. So that was Richard Wolff. He's an economist. He has his own channel as well. So we were looking at him on the Status Quo YouTube channel. Let me see if I can find his channel real quick, so that if you want to go over and listen to him, my goodness, let me go back. So, there we go. Let's see. I don't think his channel is called Richard Wolff. It's called something else. Oh, I guess it is. Yeah, he has a channel called Richard D. Wolff, Wolff. And yeah, so if you want to go listen to him talk more about economy and what he thinks is going on here, if you didn't get a chance to listen to the whole interview that I just played, you can just back up the video and do the replay. And yeah, it's very, very, not the best news, but it gives a lot of perspective to what is going on. And I feel like, you cannot listen to all the news channels that tend to sway opinion to get you to just continue to look at their news channel, and also just kind of, figure out what you want to hear and feed you that. So I like listening to experts, so that, especially ones that seem to be non-biased. Now you can, of course, they could be biased as well, but I just kind of listen to the messaging from them, try to see if they're, non-biased, and see what they have to say that's like the truth. Let's see. Sunshine says, great, not. Oh, you appreciate his thoughts. Okay. You said, Sunshine said, I run from political talk. I'm not in love with it, but I feel like I cannot, I feel like this is something different. I really do. It seems like one of those like desperate times call for desperate measures type situations. And it just seems like this is something different. And I don't want to be not knowing what is going on. And so, already it's a whole lot of just pure ugliness, but I still feel like I need to know what's going on. So I'm just trying to figure it out. Okay, great. Not to take a look over there. Got to take a look over there. Okay, I'm just reading what I want to see. Yeah. Yeah, because, I don't know, listening to someone reasonable, rational, knows what they're talking about, is an expert on the subject, it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, not about everything that's going on, just about having an understanding, because at the end of the day, we don't want to be gaslit the way that these people are doing. We don't want to be people, generally people just want to know what the truth is. And you're not going to get the truth out of, people that are trying to manipulate you or just be harsh and cruel and try to figure out all the different ways that they can hurt you. You want to know what the truth is. So then you can prepare yourself for whatever it is that you might want to do about that truth. But it's hard to be prepared when, you don't know what is going on for real. So yeah, I've been dragging out the Project 2025 stuff and trying to read on that, and just looking to see what's going on, because they're gonna just throw it out here and tell you that it's rain, and really it's pee over the top of your head. That's what they're gonna do. So I want to know what is really going on. So I'm just looking at it. Just looking at it. So I'll get back into that Project 2025 reading. It's not the whole Project 2025. It's I don't know, it's like a shortened version of what's going on and what funding is being pulled or walked away from, or what's being shut down to avoid having to fund. It's and it just is, I don't know, just telling you department by department what it is that they're doing, which we can see a lot of it is actually being done. So I'll get back into that a little bit later, but I wanted to listen to what he had to say about the tariffs. I haven't been anywhere, so I don't really know if prices are already, if retailers have already kind of gotten a jump on the price thing. Let's see. Sunshine says, now's the time for someone my age to invest in the stock market. It should be. Yep. But I have no clue where to start beside my work Roth and 401k. Yeah, it really should be. But, like right now, especially right now, you have to just kind of hold what you got, because you don't, the stock market has been falling right now. So you probably want to look at the 401k, see where you are. And I don't know. I wouldn't advise necessarily. I guess what I would advise is getting an advisor. That's what would be the best. Like find an expert to advise you on right now, because it could be a great time to get into the stock market because everything is so low. So you got a lot of sale prices going on, basically with everything has been just plunging here recently. But then again, you don't know how long this is going to go on, if he's going to change directions with these tariffs and do something else, pull this back so that the stock market can have some stability and people can feel comfortable moving forward. So yeah, I think get an advisor. Yeah, for sure. You said you watched the whole Cory Booker. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I was here working too. But thank you for being here. Yeah, I thought that was monumental. So I was like, let me capture this, because this is something special. I had seen it the night before, and then when I woke up and he was still going, I said, oh yeah, let me get in and make sure I listen to the rest of this, and then I'll just stream it, because I wasn't sure everywhere it was. I wish I had streamed it from his own platform. I think they said he put it on TikTok, but I just caught it wherever I could catch it. I think it was MSNBC. And yeah, that was really monumental. So yeah, it's definitely some good things going on. I saw all of the protests going on the weekend, and that was really good of all the people that got out to do that. I was home. I was definitely home. The weekend, let's see, was it just the prior weekend? No, it was 2 weekends ago. I actually held a prayer walk, and I plan to do it again. It was myself and 2 of my cousins, and we went out to do a prayer walk for the state of the country. So that was my silent way of being in solidarity for the state of the country to come out good for everybody. Because there are some people that think this is going to turn out good, but they're just hoping and believing that it just turns out good for the people that they want it to turn out good for, which is horrible. And it just really shows you something. Let's see. Yeah, you know what? I actually I had thought about that during the George Floyd protests, and I got sick with actually got my my heart failure set in during that time, and I could barely walk to the restroom. I had actually had to borrow my aunt's little walker. Y'all know those little purple walkers with the little wheels at the bottom. Look, it's a seat and a walker at the same time. And I don't know why they didn't give me any of that stuff at the hospital. I really need to revisit them, because I came home totally not even prepared to get from my bed to the restroom. But my aunt had one of those little walkers, and I ended up borrowing hers and getting around. If I felt like I couldn't walk that far, I would sit in the little seat, just turn around, sit in the seat, and kind of scoop myself around the house. So prayer walk was out. But I know it was bad. But yeah, so yeah, it things happened again, and it kind of came up in my heart again. So I was like, let's do it. So next time it'll be more, I'll have it a little bit more organized. But this time, it was good. I feel like it was effective, and it seems like a lot more effort started happening after we did ours. So we'll do that more. Kind of like not in a not in a loud way, just in a quiet, you think I'm just walking around the parkway, but we got a whole Holy Ghost parade with us. No, the dog incident was this year. What was that, a few months ago? When I was keeping my daughter's puppy. And then the heart failure was in 2020. Right at the onset of the pandemic and everything, which I believe it was caused by COVID before people were really knowing what COVID was. And it just kind of kept going and got worse and worse until I had to start going to the ER to try to figure out what was going on. But yeah. But now I have a pretty good report from the doctor as of this lately. I went probably about 3 weeks ago. So I just need to keep doing my cardio every day. Yeah, which is a struggle, but that's what I need to do, is daily cardio. My doctor's like, Have you been doing your cardio? So I could be doing like much better, but I got to get that cardio in, but I'm good. So, okay, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and get off of here, but I thank you for joining me, and I'll be back with some more content soon. And so we're going to stay informed and stay entertained. We have our entertainment as well, but we're going to stay informed with this political news too, so we can make sure we know what's going on. All right. Thank you. And everybody, Sunshine and Caramel Beauty 65. Thank y'all so much for chatting with me, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye. Have a good day.